ladies and gentlemen. Welcome you all to our session this afternoon on renewable energy, green technology. I'm Sim Dube from Trade Forward Southern Africa, and I'm happy to be with you this afternoon. So we're going to have our expert speakers presenting to us on their findings in terms of how we want to grow this. But maybe before we do that, I'd just like to talk to you about Trade Forward Southern Africa. We are a project sponsored by the UK government, and we actually work to help regional companies increase trade between the region and other markets. And this is how we do it by increasing access to information, a lot of information that we have to help exporters, and a lot of training that we do with our partners so that they can overcome non-tariff barriers that our exporters face on a daily basis when they look to export. So this is who we are, and we are a 3-year project. And we've clearly been involved a lot with the green technology, for the reason that if we are to increase our exports, we have to make sure that there's enough energy. We're quite aware of the fact that there is enough energy in Africa, and it is not exactly affordable. So it is important that we look at that aspect and try and help. And we've gone through this with our partners side. We've also engaged a lot of experts in the field to look at how we can actually improve this. And today we're going to be listening to some of the presentations from the experts who can actually tell us a lot more about what can be done to help South African manufacturers to take advantage of this sector that's growing. So without taking too much time, I'll introduce you to my colleague, Duncan Bonnet. Please, you can come over and maybe just give us your outline. You're more than welcome to ask questions. I'm happy to go around and take your questions. Thank you, Duncan.
Brilliant, thanks. Thanks very much, Sim, and welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. As Sim said, this is the Trade Forward Southern Africa program that we've been working on as a subcontractor, and really 4 key components to exporters and business support organizations. Access to obviously trade information, training on export trade, and how to export and what you need to overcome. Sector-specific support, so green, the renewable energy sector and the green economy in general is one of the sectors that we've looked at. And then support to women in trade, which is a cross-cutting issue across all the sectors. So whether it's green energy, the natural ingredients, the high-value agricultural products, or others as well. So those really are the objectives of this program as a whole. It's a 3-year program. We're now into the operational implementation phase of the program, and the work that we've done is a part of building up to this. So, as Sim mentioned, TFSA supports the SACU and Mozambique business community to grow that regional and international trade. From a regional perspective, obviously the other countries in SACU and Mozambique, most of the product is looking at accessing the South African market. A lot of it is around agri-industrial value chains and so on. But within the South African context, it was felt that given the importance of energy, and in particular renewable energy, to South Africa and to the region, that green tech should be included in this. Obviously, green tech is an incredibly broad sector. Lisa gave an excellent overview of that just now from a Green Cape perspective. So we, instead of trying to be everything to everyone, we said let's look at renewable energy, in particular wind and solar, and then obviously as the program's evolved, we've had to include green hydrogen as well, because that really has become a major part of our lives, not just in South Africa, but in some of the other countries that we're investigating as well. So within this, there are a number of different deliverables. A guide to establishing manufacturing and assembly operations in South Africa's SEZs, and I think obviously, as Lisa said, the Atlantis SEZ is purpose-built for the sector to take advantage of manufacturing here. Roughly 70% of South Africa's green economy is based in the Western Cape, so it makes sense to have this down here as well. My colleague Donald Mackay from XA International Trade Advisors has actually done this guide as to how to practically look at establishing yourself in an SEZ. What are the steps you need to take? What are the rebates? How does it work? Stuff that I don't understand. You need trade lawyers for this kind of thing. So Donald will be chatting to you a little bit about this after I've finished. Then the second part is a database of projects and programs in Sub-Saharan Africa. So that's, in other words, it's the whole of Africa, excluding the 5 North African markets. So it doesn't include Egypt across to Morocco, simply because those economies tend to be far more integrated into Europe and the Middle East than they are into Sub-Saharan Africa, although there are caveats to that as well. So what we've done is we've developed this database of projects and programs. It's a live thing. I was explaining to a couple of people that I updated the database for the last time on Friday, and it's already out of date. Because in the last 3 days we've picked up another 10 projects in the region. So it's an incredibly dynamic environment that we're working in renewable energy. Obviously the lifting of the limit within South Africa for embedded power to 100 megawatts has made a big difference to our economy, but it's not just here that we're seeing this drive for project activity, and I'll take you through that as well. And then what we'll be following this up with is a conference and B2B event to highlight the South African capability in renewable energy manufacturing, assembly, but also support, operations and maintenance. If you've got a wind farm in, let's say, the DRC, and you've brought everything in from Asia or from wherever it happens to be, and you don't have that support capability, your project comes unstuck. It's the same for every product out there. And what we like to say is when you sell cross-border in Africa, you're not selling a product, you're selling a solution, because it has to come with that package of operations, maintenance, even the logistics of getting goods into market, getting a wind, a wind tower or whatever. And companies here in the logistics sector have that capability to do that based on the experiences they've had. So we're going to be doing that conference in July. So linking the South African value chain to OEMs, South African suppliers, institutions, and hopefully project developers from the rest of Southern Africa, certainly the SADC region, and maybe a little bit beyond that as well, to highlight exactly what they can get out of a regional manufacturer. And then obviously ongoing support to the key BSOs in South Africa to sustain that intervention. What you don't want with any of these programs is that when the funding stops, the program stops. We see that so often across the continent. A country will get money to implement a program, and as soon as the program is finished, so does that implementation. So we want this to become a living and an organic program that will sustain the industry going forward, and hopefully to build on the 19,000 jobs we've already created in the sector. Right, so as I explained, green tech, very, very broad. It can be applied to almost any sector of the economy and in any manner. We decided to focus on the wind, solar and green hydrogen because they're already well established across South Africa and becoming well established across the broader African continent. So the green hydrogen is also emerging as an opportunity in a smaller number of countries. Some of those we don't believe will happen. There are just too many obstacles in their path, but certainly in Southern Africa there's a great opportunity to develop green hydrogen and downstream processing from there. So the landscape has evolved significantly over the last decade, from just a handful of wind and solar projects linked mainly to IPP programs. The difficulty with that is that if you don't have IPP legislation in a country, you can't develop independent power. And we did some work back in about 2014 with DEG, the German financier, on exactly this. And we eventually narrowed it down to about 9 countries where there was real opportunity, where you had independent regulators, you had the requisite projects in the system that they could then start to invest in, and you had the regulatory frameworks. That's changed completely. Almost every country now on the continent has some kind of IPP legislation in place and has independent power producers operating in them. So that's what we're looking at. And then apart from that, you've now got the mining and industrial sector is a leader in creating demand for renewable energy. We see it on an almost daily basis. Certainly the big South African mining houses are all trying to get at least a component of their power from renewable energies. And we believe that that will only accelerate going forward as the technologies become more widely available and cheaper. So other sectors are following, and IPP development is evolving away from more restrictive models to more flexible ones. So we really do believe that there is a great opportunity within that. Okay, so we've been tracking projects in the sector for a number of years now. I've said there are over 500 wind, solar and green hydrogen projects in our project platform. It includes some of the ones that have been completed because obviously they still need operations and maintenance to keep them functioning optimally. Pipeline projects from feasibility through to construction, and then conceptual projects as well as some of the renewable energy programs. If you look at institutions like Power Africa from the US or the World Bank, African Development Bank, and a lot of the other donors, they have large power sector programs. And quite a large component of that is obviously devoted to renewable energy. Now, that may be your big utility scale renewables, 200 megawatts or so, but it might also be much smaller, microgrids. The opportunity for microgrids in Nigeria currently stands at about $20 billion over the next 3 years. So it's not just about utility scale. There is a much bigger opportunity as well in off-grid and in mini-grid and in circular grid. So that kind of stuff is what we're looking at. The total value of the project, including the completed ones, is about $71 billion. But a lot of the projects that have obviously been announced more recently don't have a project value attached to them. So we're looking at probably closer to $90 billion, maybe $100 billion of operational, under construction and conceptual projects in the system. And as I say, literally every day there are more projects being announced and more projects coming into the system. So it is that dynamism that we're looking at. You can see the evolution sort of from 2014 to 2016. Not that many projects. 2017 is a bit of a shimmerer because that's when we actually input everything into our database. So those previous years would have had a few more projects in them. And that's obviously the start of the incorporation of the REAP projects in that stage. So it really, 2017 probably reflects from 2013 through to that in reality. 2018 was more in line with previous years. But what we then see is from 2019 onwards, and even during COVID, if you look at those statistics, is just how many new projects have come into that pipeline. So it's a really, really exciting view to look and see exactly how that pipeline has started to evolve. And you can see from conceptual stage, obviously in 2022, most of the projects that we've put in are at concept stage, but then some of the others are at design, feasibility and tender and moving through into construction and completion. So the number of projects that we're seeing and the fact that whereas in previous generations to try and get a power project off the ground in Sub-Saharan Africa has always been a monumentally difficult undertaking. The utilities in general are broke, so they can't fund their own projects. They then rely on donor funding. Donor funding is not always cheap, and it comes with its own unique set of restrictions. But then who are your off-takers? If you're selling power into the grid as an IPP, does that utility have the ability to pay you for it? And so funding becomes a real issue in these things. But as you see now, because you've got so many more players in the market, so many independent buyers of power, that you can actually fund and develop a project pipeline much more easily than you can if you're just looking at state-owned enterprises or utilities. And so what we start to see is that large industrial companies, mining companies, whatever they happen to be, sometimes even municipalities are developing their own power capacity to be able to have reliable power and less expensive power. If you are a country like Djibouti at the moment, which runs about 50% of its power on HFO, with an oil price at $111 a barrel, I read this morning, you're suffering. You really are. Whereas if you're a country like Ethiopia, which is developing a whole raft of largely hydropower, but also wind and solar power, and is able to sell that through to Djibouti at about a quarter of the price that they're paying for HFO. So you can start to see why it starts to make sense. Not just the moral imperative to move away from fossil fuels, but also that it starts to make business sense to start looking at renewable technologies. And in Africa, we have, in most parts of Africa, perfect weather conditions for different types of renewables. So there you can see 2022, we're already at 50% of the level in the number of projects that we saw in 2020 and 2021. And that just gives you an indication of the acceleration of the move towards renewable energies on the continent. Right, so in terms of the countries, obviously South Africa is one of the, or has the largest component of projects. This is the number of projects, it's not necessarily the value, because the values do get skewed quite substantially. 21% of the total, so just over a fifth of all renewable projects that are on the table are in South Africa. That obviously includes ones that have been completed in South Africa. And then we see the SADC region, where we obviously have duty preferences into our neighboring markets, accounts for around about 50% of all the projects. So within the area of the geographic area of Africa that is most easily accessible to us, we have about 50% of the project basket. And I think that that's really important because we have excellent road and rail and sea and even air links with the rest of the Southern African region, the broad SADC region, as far as up into the DRC. You know, whether it's up into the southern DRC, Lubumbashi and Kolwezi, the mining areas, or if it's up into Kinshasa, you can now get, ShopRite does it, they truck their goods up to Kinshasa, and it takes about 10 days from Cape Town through Namibia, Angola, and up into Kenya. So that I think is really important. Then East Africa, about another 20%. Kenya, obviously very prominent. They've embraced renewable energy and IPPs very, very early on. They were one of the first countries to do it. I think we all know that they've got a couple of very big wind farms in Kenya. One of the issues they had with developing that was servitude, private land ownership. I know it's a hot topic in South Africa, but private land ownership means that every farmer along that transmission line has to be paid off. In Tanzania, state owns all the land, so you can develop these sort of things a lot quicker. Although perhaps, let's not get into moving people off land at this stage. But I think what you see there, East Africa, 20% of the total, good shipping and air links from South Africa. I think what's also quite exciting about that is the East African community, so that's Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, South Sudan, and very soon to be DR Congo, has submitted its articles of implementation to the Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat in Accra, Ghana. So within, hopefully this year, we will start as South African companies to benefit from the phasing out of import duties and additional taxes into those key markets in East Africa. And I think that is a really exciting thing for us as a manufacturing hub in the region. So West Africa offers an excellent supply opportunity, especially from Cape Town and the Atlantis SEZ. You've got shipping links obviously up to the whole west coast of Africa, starting with Namibia, but then all the way up to places like Ghana, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, and Cameroon, Senegal, and so on. So that, I think, is important. 24% of the total. Nigeria, obviously very prominent. And in Nigeria, the opportunity is almost unlimited. It's the one country in Africa that has, possibly with Ethiopia, but if you're looking at a population of over 200 million people, so 1 in 6 people on the African continent lives in Nigeria. 1 in 9 Africans globally, including the diaspora, is Nigerian. It's a country that is moving, whatever the headline economics say. If you visit Nigeria, and I have the pleasure and the honor of going to Nigeria often, you will just see the dynamism of the internal economy. In Lagos, every time I'm there, there's new buildings going up. There's new factories being put in. The country has, just from a developmental perspective, they produce, or they have an installed capacity of about 4 times South Africa's cement capacity. Cement is a bellwether for development. So that kind of stuff. They have one factory, Aliko Dangote's factory, that produces more cement than PPC produces in South Africa. One factory. And they have a 30 megawatt solar power plant attached to that factory. So Nigeria is an incredible market, and it's one that we believe offers us excellent opportunities going forward, and particularly from a base down here in the Western Cape. So you can have a look at those countries, and you can see that they are actually pretty well spread around the region. Some of our neighbors, including Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Namibia, Botswana, Zambia, are all in the mix there, and then some of the more far-flung markets. And once you start getting up to places like Senegal on the west coast, that becomes more difficult from a shipping and a logistics perspective, simply because Europe is much closer to the bulge of West Africa than we are. In fact, there are ports in the north of Brazil that are closer to Lagos than Cape Town is. So we do need to bear in mind that there are some of those logistics issues. But because we have a very strong logistics industry around this sector, it does give us some advantages around that as well. So West African mining companies are emerging as developers and clients as well. So it's not just the South African mining industry. We're also seeing in the DR Congo, there's a move towards moving off the grid as much as possible because of the utility problems that they have in that market. So I think that really kind of sums up what the opportunity is in the rest of the region. So just looking forward, the initial desk research is going to be finished by the end of March. And then we need to figure out how we keep updating it on a regular basis because of the sheer numbers and volume of new activity that's coming into play. And it'll be a fairly simple database, but it's one that we want that the business support organizations are able to use to say to potential investors, just look at the opportunity that we have from a base here in South Africa. So it'll be the name, the country, the location of the project, you can geolocate them, the type, the value, description, the stage, who the project owner or developer is, and then the OEM and technology companies involved. And from that, we will use that database for the conference and B2B in July, and to try and bring all those key players together to showcase South Africa as a hub for the green and the renewable energy industry in Africa. So I think that really is what we're trying to do, and then take that, use that not as an end point. I think, and I'm going to say this and I'm going to be blunt about it, too often in South Africa we look at events as an end point. The 2010 World Cup, we all had this massive sigh of relief once the final whistle had blown, because we've produced a fantastic event. That should have been the starting point to attract more investors and tourists into South Africa. It shouldn't have been the end point. And within literally 3 weeks, the world's attention was focused on Brazil. So we need these kinds of events to actually be the starting point to engage with global OEMs, tier 1 suppliers, and so on and so forth, to encourage them to seriously consider South Africa as a hub for the development of a much larger green tech sector in South Africa. And we believe that that's possible. And then obviously, it's not restricted to exporting into the rest of Africa. We've got Latin America that we could quite easily tap into, as well as other parts of the world. But this is really where we're starting. So, you know, the BSOs that we're initially working with, Atlantis SEZ, which is a purpose-built green tech SEZ, they've obviously got a stand here, located 40 kilometers from Cape Town. I'm not going to read through all of that. I took it off their website, so go on their website and have a look. Green Cape, Lisa told you a lot about Green Cape just now, if you were in that presentation. If not, Lisa will be able to give you a copy of it. It's an excellent summary of what they do and what the capabilities, the existing capabilities in South Africa are. And then the South African Electrotechnical Export Council, which incorporates power as one of its divisions. Chibone Evans and her team also have a stand here. Go and bend Chibone's ear. She's a great champion of the sector in South Africa, and she'll be able to give you a better idea of exactly what they're doing. Chibone gave me a very interesting stat a while back that up to 70% of new energy development in the next decade in Africa will be renewable energy. That obviously includes hydro, but I think that really is an exciting thing to look at. So what this will allow, it'll allow the BSO, the business support organizations, to provide potential investors, manufacturers, component suppliers, developers, all those people in that value chain with a near real-time view of the sector in support of developing local supply side capacity in South Africa. And then will also be used as the tool for that delivery at the conference in July. So I think that if you would like to know more, Sim Dube, who introduced me a little bit earlier, is here, as well as his colleague Zintle Pakati. There are their email addresses. There is the Trade Forward Southern Africa website, and you can contact them if you would like to find out more about the program and what we're doing going forward. And I think that's enough from me. What I would like to do now is to introduce my colleague Donald Mackay from XA International Trade Advisors, and he will take you through some of the regulatory issues that if you want to establish in an SEZ, what it's all about. It's not just simply pitching up and sticking up a factory. I wish it was that simple. It isn't. So Donald, if you would like to step forward. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if there are any questions that anyone has at this stage. Yes. Yeah, okay, so the question was off-grid. Obviously, if the projects are sizable enough, then they would be included. I think the danger is you end up going down a rabbit hole if you start including, sort of macro has put solar panels on its roof or much smaller off-grid. But as I mentioned, in Nigeria, they believe that the mini grid and off-grid market has potential for about $20 billion worth of projects in the next 2 to 3 years. So if there is, and the off-grid is quite often part of a component of a larger renewables or larger power program, usually with funding from one of the development finance institutions or bilateral governments or so on. So yeah. Okay, if there are no more questions, comments, then I'm happy to step down and get Donald to come up and chat through this.